All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some seriously practical, no-nonsense insights from Paul McGee, all about why we worry, and more importantly, how to actually stop doing it. You know, this is one of those topics that literally affects every single one of us. But how often do we actually stop to look under the hood and figure out the mechanics of what's going on in our own heads? Not often enough, right?
So let's start with what is honestly a glaring paradox. Think about this for a second. If you were born back in the year 1900, your life expectancy was, what, maybe 46? But if you were born in 2003, you're looking at well over 80 years. We have unprecedented wealth. We literally hold incredible technology in the palms of our hands. And yet, we are living through an absolute epidemic of stress. It's wild. The author asks this really fantastic, punchy question to kind of shake up our baseline assumptions. He points out a super uncomfortable truth. Materially, we have got it so incredibly good. But psychologically, we have probably never felt so bad. I mean, you just have to look at the headlines screaming about our fragile mental well-being every single day. We really have to step back and wonder, why is that?
Well, to untangle this whole mess, we first have to get our definitions straight. We all tend to throw around words like worry, anxiety, and stress like they're the exact same thing, but psychologically speaking, they are completely different beasts. Let's start with worry. Worry is purely a mental exercise. It's just your mind completely fixated on a problem. And as McGee points out, there's worth it worry that actually pushes you to take action, and then there's worthless worry, which is really just you spinning your wheels.
Okay, then we have anxiety. Now, anxiety is not just thinking, it's a feeling. It's that horrible, creeping, visceral sense of dread. You know the feeling, like something is about to go terribly, terribly wrong, even if you can't exactly put your finger on what it actually is.
And finally, there's stress. Now, stress takes things completely out of your mind and dumps them right into your body's primitive survival system. This is your inner reptilian brain literally changing your physical body, spiking your heart rate, dilating your pupils, all to keep you alive through a classic fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, here's the kicker. These three things, your thoughts, your feelings, and your physical responses, they do not operate in a vacuum. They constantly feed into one another, creating what McGee calls the unholy trinity. It's this vicious, continuous cycle of worry, stress, and anxiety that can totally trap you if you're not careful.
Now, you might assume this vicious cycle always starts with a thought, right? But it actually doesn't. Picture this. You're walking past a super high hedge on a beautiful sunny afternoon, and out of nowhere, you hear a vicious, snarling dog right next to you. Boom, your physical stress spikes instantly. That's your primitive brain stepping in to save your life. But then that physical stress triggers the anxiety, that deep dread, which then triggers the worried thoughts about how on earth you're going to escape.
Or, the cycle can start with just a really vague feeling. Imagine you're walking into a big meeting with senior leadership, and you intuitively sense something is just off. You feel that dread, the anxiety, which then prompts a cascade of worried thoughts about, sounding foolish or messing up. And suddenly, your heart is racing with physical stress. Boom! Before you know it, the whole cycle is completely spinning out of control.
So the really crucial point here is that living in this continually revved up state comes with some pretty severe consequences. McGee uses this great analogy of an elastic band. It's meant to be stretched, sure, but if you stretch it too far for way too long, it snaps. Constant worry just drains your energy, it wrecks your immune system, and it clouds your thinking to the point where you start making really foolish mistakes. Basically, stress makes you stupid and it makes you sick.
But honestly, the worst part of all of this unholy trinity completely robs you of your peace right now, in the present moment. I mean, how can you possibly enjoy today when your brain is perpetually trapped in some terrifying, completely hypothetical tomorrow? Constant worry is essentially just stealing the energy we desperately need to focus on today.
So if the toll of this cycle is that incredibly high, if it's costing us our health and our peace of mind, we really have to stop and ask ourselves a hard question. Why on earth do we keep habitually falling into this trap?
Well, to answer that, I want you to think about this question, and I'm being entirely serious here. Which side of your mouth do you chew your food on? I bet you probably don't know the answer right away without actually stopping to think about it. And why is that? Because you live so much of your day-to-day life purely on autopilot. And honestly, the exact same thing goes for your worrying. We don't consciously block out time on our calendars to worry. It just happens, automatically.
So to knock you off that autopilot, we have to drag the subconscious up to the surface. We're going to expose 6 hidden triggers that subconsciously kick off your personal cycle of worry, anxiety, and stress.
Because once you actually know what you're looking for, that is when you can start taking back control.
Let's look at the very first hidden trigger. Okay, this is going to sound absolutely bizarre, but some people actually enjoy worrying. I know, right? But think about it. Daily life can get terribly mundane. For some folks, worrying actually provides a weirdly addictive rush of adrenaline. It manufactures this false sense of dramatic purpose and significance when everyday life just feels a little too boring and routine. Moving on to trigger number 2, and this one is all about the environment we're currently living in. In the 21st century, we are constantly bombarded with rapid change and totally unprecedented uncertainty about our jobs, the economy, what the future holds, everything. As humans, we have a very deep fundamental psychological need for stability. So when constant change disrupts that, it plunges us straight into the deep end of anxiety. Now, trigger number 3 comes down to a simple lack of knowledge. It is a very basic equation. If you combine low skill with a really high challenge and give someone zero support, high anxiety isn't just a possibility, it's a mathematical certainty. McGee tells this hilarious story about being an 18-year-old bank clerk. He had zero training, he was completely overwhelmed, and a coworker actually walked up to him and said, "Mate, a blindfolded monkey could do this job." Ouch! When we are stripped of our competence plummets, and our stress absolutely skyrockets.
Then we have our fundamental need for control, which brings us to our 4th trigger. Let's be real, we are all control freaks to at least some degree. Think about the pure, unadulterated stress of sitting at the gate waiting for a delayed flight or waiting for a buyer to finalize a house sale. When we're totally stripped of our ability to influence a situation, our stress just peaks.
But here is something super important to remember. It's your perceived lack of control that actually kicks the stress cycle into gear. In these helpless moments, we use worry as this sort of delusional tool. It's exactly like that old joke about the guy throwing shredded paper out the window of a moving train to keep elephants off the tracks. It doesn't actually do anything to stop a train crash, but the simple act of doing it makes the guy feel like he's somehow in control keeping the elephants away. That's what worry does for us. Now, our 5th trigger is actually rooted in a really positive place, our values. Think about it. The person who never seems to worry about a single thing might just be someone who never really cares about anything. Your stress is very often directly tied to the things you value highly, but that can easily go way too far. I mean, if you are constantly pestering your 49-year-old son to put on a coat because it's slightly chilly out, you're not really just caring anymore. At that point, you are letting your values hold your anxiety completely hostage.
And finally, our 6th trigger is our upbringing. When we're kids, we are absolute sponges. So, if our parents or caregivers modeled a worldview where life is just this constantly hostile, deeply stressful place, there's a massive chance we absorbed and inherited that exact same habit. Basically, we learn how to panic by watching the people who raised us panic. Monkey see, monkey do.
So, now that we've broken down the actual mechanics of this whole paradox, it is time for what the author beautifully refers to as hammock time. This is a really crucial moment for you to hit pause on your day, stop reacting on pure autopilot, and truly look inward to understand the why behind your own behaviors.
And I want to leave you with one final totally vital question to chew on today. Out of those 6 hidden triggers we just covered, which one is secretly running your life from behind the scenes? Seriously, take a minute to identify it and name it, because doing that is the very first step toward permanently breaking out of that unholy trinity of stress. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you something great to think about.